Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of Automotive Logistics Supply Chain Conference, which is, as you've probably gathered by now, co-located with Automotive IT. For those of you who may be just joining us today, my name's Louis Yakumi. I'm the founder and group publisher of Automotive Logistics. We publish a couple of magazines, Automotive Logistics and Finished Vehicle Logistics, various online newsletters and so on. And I think this year it's 10 conferences around the world, which include 4 in North America, China, Brazil, UK, which is a new one. So we do conferences around the world, but this is the first one. We've only just, our latest conference is in the UK. Europe, obviously, Eastern Europe we're launching this year. So we try and do what we do here around the world and try and share some of that knowledge that we collect from there with our audiences, whether it's online on magazines or at our conferences. I hope you had a good first day. I hope you enjoyed the sessions, met some good people. We know that the networking is such an important part of the event. And I hope you enjoyed last night's networking opportunities, the gala dinner hosted by Ryder at the Natural History Museum, which was fantastic. And then those of you, I think I could almost tell those of you who went to the Sergère Afterglow party just by looking out. But I hope you enjoyed those opportunities to network and so on. A couple of other points. The evaluation forms are in front of you now, and you can also complete your thoughts and evaluations on the app. So please, obviously, you know, if you're leaving early, then complete them now. If you're staying till the end of the day, which you should do, just before you go, make sure you complete the evaluation forms. They are very important to us. We do make a lot of decisions based on your direct feedback, so make sure you keep that. Give us the opportunity. We'd love to hear your feedback. And I said earlier, you know, you shouldn't leave early because we've got a great day ahead. You know, this session, which will be very interesting, in hearing some examples of what some companies have done or are doing to change and disrupt their companies and our industry. And later on in the day, we've got another couple of sessions where we actually start merging again automotive logistics and supply chain with automotive IT. The last 2 sessions will be joint sessions where they're more kind of Q&As, where we get a chance to get both sides together and ask our questions and make some comments on the relationship between supply chain logistics and automotive IT. And you'll also see in front of you that we've got red and green cards. So the red and green cards are for snap kind of polls, where, you know, simple answers and so on. So I just wanted to ask a quick poll questions. For those of you who are colorblind, just wave it in the air and it just looks like people are answering the question. But the first question is there a link? Is there an important link between automotive logistics supply chain and automotive IT? Are they 2 sectors that should work together? So again, you know, green if you think they should work together, red if you think that they're just 2 separate things that, you know. Okay, yeah. Okay, so talking about colorblind people, I can't tell the colors. They all look grey to me. No, seriously, it was very much green answers. So there should be a link between automotive IT and automotive logistics and supply chain. The second question is the relationship close enough? We agree that there should be a link. Is the relationship within your companies or within your suppliers or partners, is the relationship close enough? Again, green if you think it is close enough and you work together well, or red if you don't think it's close enough and maybe, you know, you should work a bit more closely together. So this one's more red, including one half and half. So again, you know, something which is one of the reasons we've co-located these conferences. And the third question on that kind of subject is who should lead the relationship? Should it be, you know, supply chain who have many of the pain points, and therefore we want to work closely with the IT departments and the CIOs so that we can work together to find solutions? Or should it be the IT departments and the CIO saying, you know, we've got some great solutions that we think of that you should use. So again, who should lead the relationship? Supply chain and logistics or IT? Green is for logistics and supply chain. Red is for, okay, well, I think this is overwhelmingly green. It'll be interesting to see if they had exactly the same vote next door, what the answer would be. And I will ask that question, and maybe all three of those questions again in one of the mixed sessions to get an idea of what the whole community kind of thinks. But I think what it does do is highlight why we've co-located the conferences and something, you know, we should all do, or anything we can do to help you to improve that relationship, please let us know. But onto the first session of the day, session 5. And again, as I said at the beginning, we're going to be looking at how different companies are attacking some of these problems. And, you know, it's not necessarily about IT, but, you know, let's face it, when you're looking at a solution for automotive logistics, the solution's is often IT related. It's less frequently physical. You'll never hear a company stand up and say, we're the best logistics company because we've got the fastest drivers, or we've got the biggest trucks. They normally say we've got a better system or visibility or track and trace or something like that, or network planning or something. So we're going to hear again how some companies have developed solutions, or some organizations have developed solutions that can help our industry. The three speakers, we've got, I think academic's too soft a word, I think, for Benoit from Georgia Tech, because it makes it sound like he's a guy, or there might be a perception that the academics live in a world which isn't real, and it's, you know, I think, you know, at Georgia Tech and Benoit very much works in reality. Forward-looking, innovative, yes, but works in a real world. And then we're going to have what in Europe we call the award-winning AGCO, because they've won quite a few awards in Europe for some new things that they're doing for their company. So we'd like to hear an update on that. And joining us in a few minutes is Edna Brodsky, the Chief Solutions Officer from OmniID, for a tech company, to see what they can offer and what they're doing to improve the supply chain. The sessions isn't necessarily to go into detail and algorithms and stuff like that about the technology. It's a little bit about the journey, why and how, and what needs to be done to incorporate IT, or just to bring new solutions to the industry. But I'm very pleased to invite the first speaker of the day, Benoit Montreuil, the Director of Supply Chain and Logistics Institute, and with a host of other job titles, but I'm keeping to this one to keep it simple, from Georgia Tech. You know, most of you here will know it. In fact, even if you're not from Georgia or Atlanta, you'll definitely know the reputation of Georgia Tech for their supply chain. So we're really pleased to have Benoit as a speaker at the conference. Thank you, Benoit.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. What I'm going to do, like in 15 minutes roughly, is tour you about what we perceive interacting with several companies in your domain about, I called it disruptive innovation, and not just putting the stage, but also essentially how you go at grasping it. So, but it's 15 minutes, so there's little we can do. We'll try to do it as best as possible. Well, technical issue. Okay, I got it. Okay, so what I wanted at the beginning is give you a few slides, okay, which is basically stuff that you know about, that you've covered probably in the previous day. But I wanted to just give the snapshot to understand the kind of overall world we're stuck with right now. That we have the privilege to be in. First is there's a lot of innovation going on inside facilities, inside logistics facilities. So voice, light picking, remote now, wireless, human augmentation. We've got a lot of mobile robots, okay, crawling. There was Modex a few weeks ago, and many suppliers are jumping into this. I know very many implementations of this stuff. collaborative robots where we used to have big walls around robots. Now they're going to be more and more collaborative. Like I said, new types of fulfillment facilities that are extensively relying on robot crowd of robots and swarms like this. A lot of stuff on additive manufacturing also. So it's not there full scale yet, but for prototyping, for special service parts, we're going to see that it's going. But the full momentum is there in terms of reducing the complexity of the supply chain. You get the material, you print, and you get it on demand. Clearly, we're not there for mass production yet. But still, okay, it's something on the lookout. I don't know any major company who doesn't have a big stake in this stuff right now. Artificial intelligence, it was fun because through the decades, it was kind of taught as science fiction, daydreaming, etc. Right now, it's full back on, okay, machine learning, okay, it started big data analytics, machine learning, AI, what are we going to do with all this data and on shape, unstructured. And there's been a lot of advances in computing, in algorithms, in software, as well as sensor technology that connects us to a lot of information that needs to be digested. So we see a lot more of this going on. Even in the vehicle technology, when you see autonomous vehicle, there's a lot of those technology in there, but also in all kinds of things like control towers and so on. So talking about control towers, we see a lot of innovation going on getting our supply chain logistics systems much more smart, okay, much more data-driven, and instead of piloting with looking in the mirror for looking at what happened, we want to know the pace now, and we want to be able to predict where it's going so that we're going to be ahead of the game and reacting fast and well to disruptions, okay, that are happening. So this is going to take multiple shapes. There's the big shape, which is like the situation rooms, okay, control tower, where you're going to be a number of people will be in position to affect and help pilot an entire supply chain, or at least chunks of a supply chain. But also we all have smartphones and the likes, and essentially a lot of information will be pumped to us, analyzed, digested, and we'll be able to interact on the fly wherever we are. So we're already in there. It's going to get more and more, not just for the executives, but all the way down the ladder into the network of employees and partners. So I mentioned the word disruptions because all the technologies I've talked to you about, for me, if you think of each one independently, I mean, this is business as usual, okay? I've been in that stuff for almost 40 years now, and every year, the 5 years, you get new ones, and it keeps rolling like this. It's the breadth and depth and scope of what's happening now that is at stake. So now we have to think. I had this slide a couple of years ago about the type of disruptions we face. The left side is about like the spot disruptions, the disasters. This is the negative side, okay, of it. But there's the positive side if we know how to tackle it, which is all those innovations, and my early slides were aligned for this. But also the big thing is when we get into paradigmatic type of disruptions, the disruptions that are completely breaking away the mental model in the industry. We just lived through it in the last 5-10 years max, okay, with Uber completely attacking, transforming, disrupting, dismantling the taxi industry. In fact, in Atlanta, the only places you find taxi now are with the airport, the big hotels, and special events. Otherwise, don't look for them. You're not going to find them. They're out, okay? So this is very disruptive. Didn't happen until 20 years, much, much faster. So those kinds. So I'm going to give you an example I've been part of, okay? In 2006, I started working on a concept that I call the physical internet, which is basically thinking the same way as the digital internet, that is moving bytes, but not do it for our objects, our parts, our vehicles, and so on, and to stop thinking dedicated and think much more open. So we started and work slowly on that stuff, but it requires rethinking fundamentally the way you believe that operations, supply chain logistics should be working. So it started with very minimal. Now it has reached a point that in Europe, it has become the strategy strategic vision for logistics, supply chain, freight transportation up to 2030, 2050. Europe wants to become a physical internet. But that, you don't jump in there tomorrow and say, yes, it's done, okay? But you have to show people that can make sense. Here, what we shows an example in the consumer goods industry where we took France and took two of the top players, Carrefour, Casino, the top 100 suppliers, modeled all the flows that were associated with this, feeding the DCs of the retailers. Then we transformed it physical internet way, where we put a lot of roughly 60 hubs across France. So instead of shipping directly to your final destination, you just ship to the nearest hub where it's openly consolidated and gotten finally to your stuff. And using same roads and highways. So we got reductions overall, the system 32%, greenhouse gas emission by 60%. Those are kind of game changer. We fight not only for 0.5%, 1%, so now we're talking much higher than this. I have to get back. Okay, in distribution, storing the good, deploying the goods, okay? Now there are players that have positioned themselves getting into hyper-connected distribution, basically applying concepts that we have in computing like cloud storage and so on, and applying it for our fields. You got the ES3 model, about 70 manufacturers, suppliers that are getting their stock into the ES3 facility. Then in there, it changes ownership at one point, and then it gets full truck multi-supplier to the retailer, which would be the equivalent here of the car assembly plant. Flex.com wants to be the Airbnb of storage space. You need storage space, you just go on their website, and same way as Airbnb, you're going to find stuff, that many dollars to input, output, that many dollars per month to store it, and that's it, okay? Is it perfect? No, but it becomes a big game changer. If you have peaks and valleys, when you've got valleys, you need less storage capacity than you have. You put your storage space there, and if you lack, then you can go out there. You got even Amazon. Amazon installed over 100 fulfillment centers across the country to be able to do fast delivery. They've got it. So once they've got it, now they say, whoa, okay, we can do more. So they opened it to their vendors, but then they figured out that where do they make the most money now, okay? It's with their web services. What do they do? Cloud computing, cloud storage. So now they're opening it to every supplier. You sell on Amazon or whatever, you can deploy your stuff all across the US, being able to deliver within a day easily everywhere within the US using this. There's new kinds of thinking in there. Now, on the digital side, okay, well, blockchain is almost on the mouth of everybody in the field. It's kind of the big theme that is addressing the underlying trust issue and of all this digital data that we have, so we see it quite a lot. But the fundamental notion is we want to be able to have traceability, monitoring capabilities, to be able to do smart contracts, to be able to rely on this digital infrastructure safely, trustingly, etc. So we see that it's going to be like the combination of a number of things. Blockchain, yes, okay. Internet of Things, RFID, and all the likes, okay, to be helping us to track, put sensors. Now we can have 20 sensors on one device that's going to be like a credit card. Okay, so things are moving very rapidly. Simple Links comes from the Consumer Farms Group. They want to track shirts, T-shirts, single units. And how do you do it? Well, it's easy. The way they've done it. The shirt is in the box is in the container is in the trailer is attached to the truck is left the facility, and they keep rolling and they track each one. And each shirt, each part has a unique web location from which it's going to be, you can address it if you've got the links. So the combination of these is really something that is at the mixture of IT, supply chain, and you cannot be just IT dream this. You cannot just be supply chain and make this enable. You have to work together to make this happen. And more important, at these levels, you can't play alone. You have to play with other players to make it happen. Also, very, very important in all of this is we talk about supply chain, IT. I think it's much broader than this because essentially at the end, okay, in many cases, you're affecting the fundamental business model of your business. Okay? Here we're going to see it, for example, as mobility becomes a service It's going to change a huge amount of things in what we're doing. When it gets more autonomous, more connected, there's a bunch of things that are changing in your companies and the way you're going to do business, what we're going to expect from the supply chain, etc. So here it's shown, not going to all the details, but you got the products, the services, the process innovation, underneath the go-to-market innovation, the organizational, the financial, contractual innovation, technological innovation, and overall business model innovation. So it's a mixture of all this, and if we think just in terms of reducing the cost, we're missing the boat in most cases. We have to play on the upper level, which is on the revenue side, and the competitive edge, okay, to the firm. So, but all these innovations, except the tiny one, okay, you just can't go and say in a big organization like automotive companies and say, okay, we're there, it's done, okay? Now, you have to go by layers, like the young generation used to play computer games, so you got world 1. When you're good enough, you get to world 2, then you world 3, world 4, etc. We have to think this way. So give yourself a roadmap with visions at each of these worlds that you're expecting. What are the enablers that will make it happen? What are the drivers to make it happen? What are the successes? Are we going to be able to get to the next stage and keep climbing this ladder and understand that there's never like one solution? It's kind of, as we explore, as we discover, we're going to know more and more and get better at enacting all this. So I'm about to finish. That's my last slide. Is all this is kind of, oftentimes we think of it as an event. We're going to transform digitally our company, okay, etc. It's not like this. It's much more a process, a continuous process, where basically you've got the business model, you've got the supply chain, you have to continuously work at optimizing it, running it, and so on. But at the same time, you need people going to take, okay, what is it going to be in 5 years, okay, in 5, 10 years? What kind of supply chain, logistics system we're going to need, and what kind of overall business model this company is going to be, and how we're going to be interacting with this and enabling it. Then you need people that are going to be testing. There's a lot of exploration. A lot in the industry, sometimes we're scared of failure. Here you have to fail at some point, not because you want to fail, it's because you need to experiment, and when you experiment, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes, most of the time, we learn more with our failures because now we can adapt and get going. Then we need, once we've understood what works best, what we've tested, then we need people who are going to be able to say, okay, now it's a fact, we're going to go in that direction, let's build the action plan and make this happen and track with the multiple stakeholders that are at stake. So it's a continuous process. I've shown the left side, the business model, which is, and then the supply chain, it's the same kind of notion, and I should have had enough time to do it anyway, but it's the same time with the information system on the side, this mapping is absolutely necessary. On this, I've used almost all my time, so I'm really glad to answer any questions later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Benoit. The connected supply chain, hyper-connected supply chain, is something that we touched upon a little bit yesterday and something that I'm sure is going to get some questions for you as well. Next up, I'd like to welcome to the podium Dustin Barney, the Director of Logistics and Materials Management for AGCO. Thank you, Dustin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'm Dustin Barney, Director of Logistics and Materials Management for AGCO. So I'm going to walk a little bit about who AGCO is, because AGCO, even though we're a Fortune 500 company, $8 billion in revenue last year, not necessarily a household name. And one of the reasons for that is we don't go to market with under the AGCO brand, but under different brands. So I'm going to walk through AGCO, talk a little bit about our digitalization journey that we've done, and mostly outside our four walls with our supply base and incoming goods. We've done a lot inside the four walls as well, but I'm not going to touch on that as much. So again, a little bit about AGCO. We were formed in 1990, and at that time, kind of a holding company buying up distressed agricultural companies, and about $200 million in revenue in 1990. Last year, $8.3 billion. This year, we're going to cross $9 billion in revenue. 20,000 employees, 54 plants on 5 continents. We're definitely a large global company. Most of our revenue comes from EAME, where we are the market leader. But we have a large presence in North America, with 23% of our revenue coming from there. And we're actually the market leader in South America as well, with 13% of our revenue coming from South America. A little bit about our core brands. We have other brands in this, but these are kind of our core brands. Challenger is our high-tech professional, large-scale applications for professional farmers. And we bought that brand from Caterpillar back in 2000. Caterpillar was in the ag business for a short period of time, decided that wasn't for them, wanted to get out of the ag business. We purchased all of those assets from them and have been producing under the Challenger brand since then. Fendt is our technology leader. Fendt's kind of the Mercedes-Benz of tractors, very well known in Europe, not as well known in the United States, but a very high-tech kind of a status symbol almost for a tractor in Europe. GSI, a little bit different business for us. We got out of the mobile equipment, or not out of the mobile equipment, but strayed from the mobile equipment business in 2011, when we bought a company called GSI. So they have large grain bins, they have material handling things, they have protein and swine and poultry production, feeding houses, that type of equipment. So a lot different from what we've done with mobile equipment, and we're handling the supply chain for them as well, both inbound as well as outbound. So much different than what we were doing whenever we're shipping tractors to dealers. We're now shipping 40 loads of a grain bin to a farm in the middle of nowhere where our construction crew is ready to erect that grain bin. So a lot different for us, and we've had some challenges with that as well. And then Massey Ferguson is more of our mass market brand, our most well-known and our longest history brand. And we go to market all over the world under the Massey brand, and that's kind of our value brand, more for the everyday farmer. And in Africa, actually, we have such good market presence in Africa, folks call every tractor a Massey over there, whether it's a Massey or not. So our most globally recognized brand. And then Valtra is more of our customizable brand. This is a Finnish brand, produced in Finland originally and then in France as well. And more known for their customizable, they'll make it however you want to make it for extreme applications. So that's a little bit about us. Some of our challenges through the years is rapid growth. And again, expanding out with a lot of acquisitions. We were born out of acquisition. We grew through acquisition for the first 15 years of our existence, and then have slowed down the acquisition somewhat, broadening a bit in agriculture, but slowing down and more focused on organic growth. Some of the challenges through that, though, has been market volatility with grain prices being very high and low. In 2013, they kind of peaked. Great year for agriculture, record year. Everybody bought new equipment and refreshed their fleet. And in 2013, you had the most modern fleet of agricultural equipment that had ever been out in the field. And then the grain prices started to fall off. So agriculture goes into a depression. And not very many people were buying new equipment. And then in a 4-year time frame, we go to the oldest fleet of equipment out in the field that we've ever had. So it's cyclical. So we have those challenges to deal with. And then our network, 54 manufacturing plants, 32 after-sales locations, 6,000 direct material suppliers, definitely all over the world, and 14,500 transport relations. The other thing we're doing is moving to a global platform strategy. This has been very good for us. Before, a combine produced in Italy versus a combine produced in the United States versus a combine produced in South America, completely different. Different parts, different look, different feel. We're going more to a global platform where 90% of the product is the same. Some of the touch points will be a little bit different. And that's been very good for our supply base, but it's also made our supply base, again, more global, and we're shipping more and more things around the world. So a little bit about what we were looking to move to. Our traditional inbound logistics was very much node-centric, region-centric, product-centric. And what we wanted to move to was looking at it very much holistically. So we pretty much had to tear down everything we were doing, and we were doing things very much separately. We weren't talking to each other very well, and put a building block foundation in place. So it starts with innovation. We need to put a system in place to handle all of this and be able to work globally. Then we need to increase our transparency, reduce our risks, and then ultimately improve our performance. So the first thing we did was partner with a company called 4Flow. And 4Flow is not a very large, well-known TMS provider in the United States, but known in Europe. I wouldn't call them a startup. They were started in 2000, but definitely have a startup mentality. So very willing to work with us, to partner with us, to do things that are innovative. And we're running everything through our TMS, from our strategic planning all the way through invoice payments and controlling and reporting. And this was something pretty new for us, especially the strategic planning piece. We were great at execution. We were great at a little bit of dynamic load planning, in the short term. What we weren't doing is that long-term planning. And what 4Flow has brought to the table is what I would call some advanced algorithms, advanced software, push-button optimization. We've got a lot of data in the system. You can push button, run it, let it go, and it'll say, here's what you should be doing. The other thing it does is we have all of our forecast data loaded in there as well. So we can actually do forward, a really good job with our forward planning and saying, you know what, I showed you guys we're kind of a cyclical business. We have a lot of seasonality, especially on our hay equipment, our grain equipment. we can look and say, you know what, we know the heavy season's coming up, our forecast is loaded, let's run our optimization, and we'll see that, you know what, we can put a milk run in here for the next 6 months, and it makes sense. After that 6 months, we're going to need to pull that back and go back to, you know, a more traditional, either LTL or not running a milk run, running once a week type of things. So we can see all that now, and it's been really, really great for us. So a little bit about the network. It is one global solution for AGCO. So we have 4Flow's TMS solution implemented all over the world now. South America is just kicking off. Actually, the pilot just launched. So they're the last ones to go, but it's implemented in Europe, and we've won a lot of awards to it, as Louis mentioned. We've had tremendous results, tremendous success there. It's implemented in China. I'll hit on a little bit of our China results here in a second. We're up and running in North America for both our inbound logistics as well as our outbound, and North America was the first one to run this system for outbound. So we're the pilot for outbound, and it's going to be going out to the rest of the regions after we're done with our pilot. And then South America, again, has just kicked off, just launched their pilot for inbound. So we have one global solution, and why that's important is, again, we're shipping products all over the world, back and forth. You know, we had a consolidation center in Europe where we were consolidating all of our European supplies that were coming over to North America. We also had a deconsolidation center in Europe where we're doing all the deconsolidation from supplies coming from North America to EAME. We weren't talking, we didn't even know that we were doing all these activities. Now we see it all in one network. We've combined our consolidation and deconsolidation activities. We've streamlined with our returnables and our return container program into that same facility. So these were things that we were all doing in isolation and didn't have good visibility to before. Now that we're in one global system, we have visibility to all of the activities that all of our regions, all of our colleagues are doing around the globe. So the second piece of the building block is transparency. So we had to get all of our information into our TMS for it to be able to function correctly. All of our forecast data, all of our PO data, all of our packaging and handling unit data. We needed all of that in there. So we had to go to a more robust system of gathering that information and communicating with our suppliers. So we put in SAP SNC as well as EDI. So SNC is more of our web EDI software. We had a lot of suppliers who are either smaller or, again, because of the seasonality, we're not doing a ton of business with and didn't go full EDI. But we have almost every one of our suppliers now on some sort of EDI, whether it's full integrated or web EDI with SAP SNC. And we're communicating all of our capacity planning management, our ASNs, forecasting, invoicing. We're doing everything through there. So we've got all of that information flowing in now, which then gets fed into our TMS system. This is just some of the stats. Again, we're going to have 2,900 suppliers on this by the end of the year, and we're actually already at that number, so we'll probably exceed it. Next thing we wanted to do was manage our risks. So we partnered with a company called Risk Methods and implemented their software and, again, integrated it in. So this software knows all of our suppliers, their locations, how much business we're doing with them. Then it goes out and monitors these suppliers, monitors their financial health. It monitors where they're at in the world. And if there's a significant event that happens in that part of the world, be it a flood, be it a hurricane, be it war, whatever it may be, we get real-time alerts that these events are going on. You have these suppliers in the area that could be impacted. So we've got that system up and running. And again, we get real-time alerts, but it also feeds into our Apex system, which is the next one I'm going to talk about. And that's kind of our performance cockpit. This is where everything ultimately flows into. And we have both internal and external views here. So all of our transportation planners can go into Apex and see the performance of their supply chain. They can see their suppliers. They can see their carriers. They can see basically everything that they need to see from a KPI standpoint. Our transportation planners go in here. Our material planners go in here, as well as our suppliers and even our carriers. Our carriers all have a scorecard as well, where they can go in and see their performance. And this is the first thing we talk about anytime we have a meeting with a supplier or a carrier. We go in and we pull up Apex and we go through the metrics at the start of any meeting. So this was something for us, this kind of brings it all together and allows us to communicate effectively with our suppliers and drive the performance where we want to drive it. So again, this is just kind of showing the funnel of how this all comes together. SNC, again, brings everything from our ERP systems, ASNs, delivery dates, handling units, packaging information, all of that type of stuff. Funnels into our ITMS system, which again allows us to do dynamic planning, long-term capacity planning, tracking, all of those types of things. Funnels down into Risk Methods, which is monitoring all of our shipments, all of our supplier activity, and everything that's going on. And then ultimately that gets fed into our Apex system, which brings all of our performance data together and allows us to have good, meaningful conversations with our supply base. So I mentioned a little bit about our China solution. Before in China, especially on our inbound freight network, we were kind of letting our suppliers handle the inbound freight both to our factories in China as well as to our consolidation center in China for our North American shipments or our EAM shipments or our South American shipments. We have a large supply base in China that ships outside of China. And with our TMS system implementing that, we were able to take control of that network and manage that network with our own in-house folks. And immediately, we saw a greater than 20% cost savings by managing that in-house, flipping all of our Incoterms to pick it up with the supplier and manage that. And it gave us great visibility for our Chinese production, but also gave us great visibility for North America as well, because now we could see our stuff going into our consolidation center, and the savings were not just for China, but also for North America. So it was a really, really great success story for us. A little bit just about our results in a nutshell. We have a smart factory approach, and if you get a chance, go online, go to YouTube, go to LinkedIn, and look at AGCO Smart Factory. We're winning a ton of awards for it. We're doing a lot of great things, and a lot of the technologies that have been mentioned in the last 2 days, you're going to see within the 4 walls of our factories. But we're matching our supply chain to mimic that as well. So cloud-based solutions, innovative solutions. We're collaborating with folks who have a startup mindset, and that's what 4Flow has with us. We have a joint partnership in North America for development. I mentioned they're big in Europe, not as big in North America, and that's okay because they came to us and said, help us get better, help us grow in North America, help us get better. So we have development time set aside with those folks. We meet on a regular basis and say, hey, these are things we'd like to see. These are things that we think would be great in a TMS for North America, and we get them implemented. So that's the advantage of working with somebody like that, is we can help shape and mold the system, and we're doing that with several different folks. So we like to partner with not just the industry leaders, but folks who are doing exciting things and new things in the industry. Cost and performance, I already mentioned that as well. We've seen tremendous over 20% cost reductions, so it's been really, really great. Paid for the system and paid for all of our implementation and digitalization efforts in less than 12 months. So a lot of great things there. Also from a sustainability standpoint, obviously we're taking trucks off the road, we're reducing our CO2 emissions. And in today's environment, with the trucking crisis going on, any truck you can take off the road is a win. So it's been a really, really great effort for us, and kind of all coming together right at the right time. So some of the other things that we're looking at and working on, and we're constantly, what I just ran through was kind of our big overarching efforts, but we're constantly looking at new things, working on new things. We typically have a couple pilots in play at any given time on something that's, a different technology or something we haven't used before. And some of it works out and some of it doesn't, and that's okay. We definitely are not afraid to, try something out that's, going to fail. That's okay. We're working on some cargo sensing technology right now that we're partnered with somebody on. So we've got the cargo sensing devices in any of our trailers that are moving between either PDC to PDC or offsite warehouse to production warehouse. Anywhere we have a closed loop network, we're running the cargo sensing to look at our optimization. And we found, as you can imagine, that we're not optimizing our trailers very well. There was not a big incentive for the folks loading and the folks shipping there to optimize. And so we're looking at taking quite a few trucks off the road with this technology, because we're finding out that, we don't need to run 10 trucks a day between these 2 PDCs. We only need to run 5. For cargo data, again, partnering with somebody else where we're getting sensors that go into our cargo, especially for our ocean freight cargo. And we're doing this anytime we either have a quality issue, or if we have an NPI program where we have something that we're shipping overseas for the first time, a new packaging design, something that has not been proven out. We're putting cargo sensors in there, getting the shock, temperature changes, all those types of things. Mostly for us, temperature is not as sensitive. It is for some of our parts, but not a lot. It's mostly on the shock and impact type of things we're trying to measure. So we're getting that data. Predictive solutions. Again, partnering with another company right now and running a pretty interesting trial with a company who started out doing work for the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice. And what they have is some algorithms that take data, and it takes massive amounts of metadata, and spits out and says, based on this data, based on where your cargo's out on the ocean, and the amount of ships going into port on the same day yours is supposed to arrive, and the weather conditions, and the date, and everything else, we predict with 90% probability that your shipment's going to be 3 days late. So we're working with that company now. They've just started moving into what I would call more commercial space and moving away from working with the government. The first thing we did was, after we talked to them, put them in contact with 4Flow, our TMS provider. Now 4Flow and this supplier are working together along with our trial. So that's ultimately our goal, if this works out, to get it moved into our TMS and have one spot for it. And then in tracking and efficiency, we're working with different folks, again, all kinds of different types of labels, trying to get to a very cost-effective and small smart label that we can put right on all of our packaging, something disposable. So we've got a few different trials in place right now with that and trying to find the right solution for us. And then a little bit with our smart factory. I said I wasn't going to talk about what's going on inside too much, but just a little bit. We've been doing Google Glass trials for 4 years now. We've been a leader in that. Again, won a lot of awards for it. Not so much in the material handling aspect. We've tried it there. It's not great for that aspect, but it's great for inspections where somebody needs to crawl all over a tractor and we want to keep their hands free. They can see the drawing, see what they're supposed to be inspecting, click off if it's good, take pictures if it's not. That's working really well. It works really well for field service guys who are out there in the field looking at a problem, want to send it back to a tech in front of their computer. They can say, hey, here's what I'm looking at. What do you think's going on? Well, the pump needs changed out or needs adjusted, whatever it may be. So Google Glass has worked well for that. Not so much for material handling, but we're using the, I can't remember the technology, Pro Glove, I believe is the name of it, which allows for, it's kind of like the ring scanners, but it's more in a glove aspect. We're using Apple Watch for our assembly line with an and-on feature on it. So whenever something needs to be AGV'd over to the assembly line, the Apple Watch can actually say, based on what you've just pulled, I've pulled my product, I'm going to need another one coming in right behind it to fill up that spot. So we're using Apple Watch for that. We definitely have went completely forklift free in our assembly factories, especially in Jackson, Minnesota, where we've piloted most of these things. We've got no forklifts anywhere within any of our assembly areas, so that's a good thing. 3D printing's been talked about a lot, and we're using that some. What we found there is, using it for things like making things that cover up parts that are going into our paint booth that just need certain sections covered up or need, bumpers put on the edges or something like that. We're using 3D printing for that. Another area where we found a lot of use for 3D printing is if we're short parts. Suppliers behind, we're short parts, we need to keep the line moving because, obviously very expensive to shut down the line. We'll produce parts on the 3D printer to keep our line moving. And then whenever the parts come in from the supplier, we'll go in and change out the 3D printed parts for something that's been PPAP approved. Mm-hmm. And I think that is it for mine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I said, it is an award-winning supply chain and logistics setup that you've developed at AGCO, and you could see why. Trying to, very forward-looking, a lot of change, using new technology like Apple Watches and so on. So, a very interesting presentation. Thank you. And now to look perhaps a little bit more specifically at the solutions and some of the technology that's out there. I'd like to welcome to the podium Edna Brodsky, the Chief Solutions Officer for OmniID. Thank you.
Thank you. Get that. Thank you. Make sure my microphone's on. That was an excellent lead-in from AGCO because a lot of the things I want to talk with you about today could start with that presentation. We had a very interesting presentation yesterday from Microsoft talking about two key concepts as we move into this new IoT world. The first is smart cloud, and that the cloud is where all of our analytics and business intelligence is housed, and we're making tremendous progress there in creating smarter cloud structures that can help us understand our supply chains and gather all the tremendous amounts of data that we're harvesting. But the other concept is smart edge. And having the edge be more autonomous, more able to make decisions, more self-directed is a key piece of what IoT means. And I think the AGCO presentation we just saw was a great example of both, especially on the smart cloud side, and some of the trials that you're starting to do in the edge with the Apple Watches and the Google Glasses and things that are happening. I invite you to go on a little journey with me now for the next few minutes, as I'll talk to you a lot more about the edge. We deal a lot up in the smart cloud side as well, but of course from our perspective, OmniID has been focused on that edge and increasingly trying to make that edge an industrial IoT structure that can perform in the new world that we're trying to create. So, who's OmniID? Just to, if you don't know us, you should. We're the leading RFID company in the industrial market space. We make harsh environment tags that go into all sorts of different applications around the world. We've got a long legacy. We were the first company to build on-metal RFID. A lot of our foundational patents created that technology, and many of the people that you see doing on-metal RFID today are licensees of ours or partners that work with us in this area. So we continue to sell many millions of those tags per month going into many industrial applications in a very, very wide range. Out of that legacy, we understand a lot of the applications, the things that we're dealing with in supply chain and also in manufacturing and many other harsh environment applications and the challenges our customers face. So born out of that legacy, a new product line several years ago began. This is our ProView solution. ProView stands for Process View, or Process Transparency, trying to create a new system, a new IoT system, that could work at the edge and make those processes more suitable for where we think the market's going. So I'm going to talk to you a lot about that. While we have our legacy in RFID and continues to be a very large part of our company revenue around the world, our ProView system is really our fastest growing product area and the area we're doing a lot of innovation with many of you in the room and many other folks that are working in the industry. So as I mentioned before, we trade across many different market verticals. We do everything from RFID in golf balls to tagging pelts in fur auctions to all sorts of interesting applications. One of the things we say at OmniID, it's never a boring day. Every day we're trying a different application somewhere else in the world, doing different things. I've jumped forward a slide. But our focus is on the manufacturing side and the logistics supply chain that supplies it. So let's start talking about the proposition. As we're talking today, one of the largest material movements that are happening through that sector, and everyone in the room knows better than I do, are these returnable containers. Hundreds of millions of returnable containers cycling around the world in many different applications, supplying many different processes. Those containers are largely still tagged with paper labels, almost universally. In some cases, they're paper with a little bit of RFID in it, but in most cases, they're just standard paper labels. And that relabeling activity and the static, ballistic nature of that paper just doesn't fit with where we're going. It doesn't give us the transparency into the process. It doesn't give us the control of the materials that we need because our world is changing. We look at what we used to be. In the 70s, production was mass production. We set up factories where we made one car line. That model didn't change for 5 years. That model had very few variations, whether it was white goods we were talking about, or automobiles, or even semiconductors. Our batches were bigger, our batches were more stable, and we spent a lot of time doing Six Sigma quality exercises. We talked a lot about dark factories, being able to automate everything and be able to continue to refine that process and stamp out exactly the same product over and over and over again with great, great quality. Do you remember those days? We don't talk like that anymore. That's not the goal anymore. In fact, the customers that I spend time with at the C-level, we're not talking about dark factories. We're talking about flexible factories. We're talking about being able to adapt instantly. We're talking about batch of one, what we call mass customization. The demands on our manufacturing enterprises now are that their facilities have to be completely transparent. They have to respond to demand triggers immediately and be able to make exactly the product that the consumer is demanding as soon as they ask for it. Inventories down to zero, or as close to zero as we can get. Really the dream that a customer can sit on the couch with their smartphone and order up a hard good like this exactly the way they want it, and when they press buy, some factory in the world should start to make it right then. And not only should they start to make it right then, the customer should be able to watch their product being made. They should be able to predict when it's going to come off the line. They should be able to watch it being shipped to their dealer or to their home and be able to understand that whole process with a transparency that's been unheard of before. It's a hard goal to achieve, but that's what our industry is wrestling with. That's what the leaders in our industry are trying to achieve. And how do they get there? Certainly paper labels can't keep up. We can't continue to label static goods and have them be ballistic through our supply chains and achieve that goal. So, one of the ways to do this, and we mentioned a few others and I can talk to as well, but one of the ways to do this is to start putting smart materials into our supply chain. Now, what's a smart material? We talked about the smart cloud, the smart edge. At the edge, you've got three key factors. You've got materials, you've got machines, and you've got humans. Those three factors working at the edge need to cooperate and work together to achieve the goal in most enterprises. IoT means that rather than having a big cloud-based structure that's telling each of those three independently how to work together, that the three can communicate and interact in a real and meaningful way so they can respond in real time to get the responsiveness and the transparency you need in the process. So smart material means that we need to start embedding intelligence into the material. How do we do that? Well, it's a progressive step that we're journeying on right now. But let's start with the container. Remember we talked about the hundreds of millions of containers that are there? these containers that are cycling with the material are great receptacles to start to put intelligence into. That the container can start to report on its progress and where it is, what's inside of it, what it needs to do next. In fact, we talk about the concept of a recipe, that each container can know where it's supposed to go. I know I'm supposed to be in the paint shop. I know I've got to go on to the loading dock. I know I've got to get on the 4 o'clock truck. If the container can know what its recipe is and know where it's supposed to go, and if it's enabled with the right technology to talk to machines that are going to handle it and talk to the humans who are going to handle it, you now have an Internet of Things concept where that material can be intelligent enough to make some decisions or help make decisions along its path. And rather than getting an analytics report tomorrow telling you what went wrong yesterday and that your material didn't make the 4 o'clock truck, you get an immediate signal saying, I need to be on the 4 o'clock truck, and get the right material, right machines and the right humans involved in the process to correct the problem immediately. Do you understand the power of the paradigm shift there? Right? It's not just another big piece of software that's going to direct everything in the enterprise. It's small, decentralized decision-making happening at the edge because you're enabling machines, humans, and material to interact in real time. So how does this work? Material to operator is a visual signal. We looked a lot at the different ways that you can interact with an operator. We looked at Google Glasses as a good example, and some of the things that are happening with augmented reality are really exciting. That fits the vision because one of the studies that we did, we found that the number one way that people learn is visually. Yes, there's ways to put audio headphones on people, and yes, there's different kinds of triggers you can use, but 80% of our learning comes visually. And that means that that's the most effective way to do it. So one way to do it is put a visual indicator on the material. In fact, isn't that what we were doing since the 70s when Toyota taught us all to do visual signage and Kanban and Six Sigma as we evolved all those different systems? So visual indicators is the number one way to talk to the humans. To talk to the machines, existing standards to talk directly from the material to the machine through a wireless communication are already there. So enabling talking to machines and humans is certainly within the realm of current technology, and that's what the ProView system does. Some examples here about identity and tracking. We've talked about that a lot, so I won't dwell on that, but obviously there's ways then to track this material going through the process. Aggregation, being able to take large amounts of material and understand where it is. In fact, we talk about 3 things that we're always trying to do. Find the one, count the many, and measure the goal. Those 3 objectives are really what this IoT program is all about, and this technology enables. The third part about autonomy, we've talked about already in some detail. And again, I'll go through a little bit quickly because I know we're short on time. And decentralization, reliability, creating more self-learning, self-healing systems that allow you to be reliable and make that 4 o'clock truck every single time through the decentralization of the decision-making. Okay, so a good example that perhaps might resonate with you is we've all gotten used to our cell phones, and especially in one application, which is navigation. Whether it's navigation embedded in the dashboard of our car or navigation in our phones while we're walking about in the world. Imagine if that phone told you your destination, but it never adjusted. It didn't adjust to where you were, didn't know where your location currently was, and if there was an obstruction or a change, a traffic jam, it didn't recalculate your route. How frustrated would you be with that piece of technology? And yet that's how we are today with our material flow. We slap a label on it at the beginning, assuming it should go along this path, and if anything changes, we can't react because the paper's static. Now imagine that that paper, that label you slapped on, is no longer ballistic, but is dynamic and can change. As it goes to a new position and understands it's behind schedule, it's behind its recipe, it's not going to make the 4 o'clock truck, it can react and tell you that. When grinding machine number 4 goes down and it was supposed to be going there next, it can signal and say, take me over to grinding machine number 2 because the queue there is shorter and I can get through the plant in time to make my objective. That's really what you've gotten used to in GPS technology, that it's recalculating and optimizing your route. Why can't we use that technology to optimize material flow? The answer is we can. And that's where the industry is going as we move on this journey towards smart material that can direct itself through the recipe and through the supply chain and through the factory. An example of this I wanted to introduce to you is technology we do, which is called view tags. You may not have heard of this category of view tags before, but one of the great benefits of RFID tags are that they're automatically read. Readers and antennas can pick them up and read them, and we can gather all that great data up in our software and understand where things are. But the disadvantage is that the operator can't tell that the tag was read. And unless you put some devices in their hand or on their eyes or have a lot of monitors hanging around, you can't tell what's happening with that material. The concept of a visual tag is that not only do you have the RFID element to track and get all the data, but you now also have an e-paper display. Why e-paper? E-paper because it's stable. Even if there's no battery power or anything going on, it stays there just like a label does. But it also draws very little power, and that means these devices can last for 5-6 years without any battery change. That gets us to an ROI statement that makes it feasible. So these are e-paper devices, much like a Kindle or a Nook, where you've teamed up the tracking capability of active and passive RFID with a visual surface, an e-paper screen, that allows you to change dynamically the instructions and the routing of the goods. It enables a lot of interesting applications. I'll talk through a couple of them, but this is really about smart material or industrial IoT at the edge. It allows your material to interact with your workers and your machines all throughout the process, or throughout a crossdock, or throughout your supply chain. This technology is getting increasingly cheaper and cheaper. As many of you know, the e-paper patents from the old e-paper wars in the 90s have all run out. And as a result, the price of these substrates are dropping tremendously. The innovation is really interesting. As we're adding a lot of color, we're adding curved surfaces, flexibility to these substrates. We certainly are looking forward to a day where we can make an e-paper label much like a paper label, almost the same thickness, almost the same flexibility and ability to be put on many different surfaces or molded directly into smart containers. So these are right at the edge, interacting with your people and with your machines. Several applications. I won't go through these in detail, but we, of course, are here and can explain more to it from our booth in the back. But let's talk about the customer journey for a minute as they start to adopt this technology. The concept of IoT and making your material smart is a powerful concept. But quite often, the very first place we start is, where's the ROI, immediate ROI I can lay my hands on? Our discussions start with the finance folks, and how do I get hard costs out of the system? The first hard cost we identify, of course, is the paper, getting rid of all those printers and the labels and the toner and the placement of those paper products directly on the material bins. That usually gets us an ROI of 12 to 18 months directly, just on that paper replacement. If we can factor in some labor, it even makes that a better value proposition. So the customer journey usually starts, as most technology journeys, paving the cow paths, right? We'll do the same thing we did before. We'll just take the printers offline and we'll electronically print. But the second part of the journey is that the process benefits begin to dominate. And the customers we've done adoption with now all over the world start to very quickly see the speed, the quality, the visibility that they get into the data, and the inventory reductions they get with making the material smart. Those efficiencies far outweigh the savings they get on just paper replacement. And they start to reinvent their process, a faster time to market, a quicker responsiveness, as-built records they can supply directly back. So that's really where that journey continues. We have a professional services group that helps on that journey. All of my staff are former manufacturing logistics folks that understand this very, very well and act in a consulting role to help set up those new systems and realize those extra benefits. So I know I'm out of time. I just want to give you a little bit of a tease into this technology and where it's going. You probably hadn't considered visual tagging before, or the possibility of making materials smart, but realize that the tiny chips and the technology has improved so much that our cost points are low enough that this is really feasible today. And more than feasible, most of the top auto manufacturers are working with us now implementing these systems. We're installed all over the world. We're doing rollouts through major tier ones that you can reference on our site. We're showing videos of different applications of these view tags being used in actual supply chain and manufacturing today. And so if you hadn't considered this, it's coming, and you'll see it soon coming through applications with your customers or in your supply chain. So thank you very much for the time you spent with me today talking about the intelligent edge.
Thank you very much. Oops. Thank you very much, Ed. Can you hear me? Because I can't hear me. Yeah, thank you very much again. Giving us a bit more information on the technology that's out there and how it can be used. So what we're going to be doing for the rest of the session, we've got the Q&A or comments, panel discussion. So here's your chance to ask some questions to the panel. And I'm sure you've got a few. I've got quite a few questions prepared. So I suppose I should warn you that by not asking any questions, that's not going to get you your coffee or snacks earlier. So if you've got any thoughts or questions, don't hesitate to ask them. And also at the end of the Q&A, I think we're going to do a polling survey where we've got a few questions that we wanted to get your feedback on. So if you're not on the app yet, then please log on to the app, because we'll be asking some questions from the app as part of a polling voting survey. And of course, I have got the app on in front of me here. So if you actually want to ask questions directly to the panel or via me to the panel, then of course you can use the app to ask some questions as well. But I'll start off really on the connected supply chains. So I suppose it's mainly really to Benoit, but we heard a little bit yesterday about some collaboration and companies working together. So trying to bring some connection to the supply chains. So really to Benoit first, are disconnected or unconnected supply chains the rule? I think we're disconnected in the automotive industry. Are other industries similar? Are FMCG goods, they're the same, or or other industries ahead of us, or when it comes to connected supply chains?
I'd say that in many ways, your industry has through the years connected very strongly with the dyads between suppliers and the companies. So that's been strong, and it's getting stronger, and we see a lot of the application helping this to happen. What I see much less is multi-company, broad scope type of cooperative platform. Even the word collaborative, we wrote a book in the 1990s about the network enterprise. Was all about you do it yourself, you have it done by others, you do it together with others, or you just don't do it. But this notion of collaboration entails now the notion that, okay, we're going to have to sign a strategic alliance, going to get into a consortium or something. It has to climb the ladder. So what happens is that it becomes kind of bottlenecking because it's long to deal, it's hard to scale, and it's hard to adapt. So in most of the applications I've seen are just a limited number of players. You never go through the broad scale. Let's take like in the southeast here of the U.S., we have many automotive companies that have put car assembly plants and other types of vehicles. But you look at each of them, except with a few lateral partnerships, okay, they play their game solo. Okay? So they have many of the same suppliers, some are different, or if it's not the same supplier, they come from the same kind of regions, and they're located within a few miles or 100 miles at most. But anyway, those are kind of giants, do their stuff almost independently. So what we're after, and I think where there's a lot of gap, is trying to enable this step to go beyond the single monolithic type of game. And even within a company, oftentimes different divisions, different plants, okay, they don't collaborate that much again. Now, do we see it in other industries? Well, it's a game that is changing. Now we see a lot of movements in the consumer goods industry. And also we see a lot of action going on with the parcel logistic type of industry, where everybody was thinking their own little thing. Now they think differently. I have an example in mind that in America, the usage of smart lockers, for example, we're seeing it, but at very low scale. Okay? Meanwhile, like in China, people I'm dealing with, the Chinese have implemented like over 60,000 of them in the last few years. But what they ended up doing is say, listen, we're going to fight on our service, our smartness, etc. But we're not going to fight on those basic logistics assets. And they made sure that 5 out of the 6 top logistics providers went together and they created HiveBox. And now you've got those HiveBox everywhere. You go in the headquarters of one of the competitor, and you'll see people servicing it okay, from other companies in its business as usual. So this is the kind of thing that in this industry, we're not yet there. There's a lot of good moves, okay? Other examples, very simple, is you ship trucks out of the plant. They're full of cars or SUVs or whatever. Then they go their little route. Then what happens? They just come back empty, okay? So that's half the time, okay, that they're empty. So why not be smarter and try find ways so that you're going to return stuff to your plants, or if not to your plants, at least to your region. So there's a lot of things like this that we see little beginnings, but not on the scale and scope that could be done, especially with the new mind frames, the new technologies that are currently available.
Okay. And Dustin, how connected are you with either other companies so you can share ideas and assets or whatever, and even up and down your supply chain? How connected is your company in that way?
Yeah, not nearly as connected as we could be, and I share a lot of the same sentiments, but we have partnered with some of our suppliers and shared with them what we're doing, because they're aware of what we're doing, because they're using our systems. And we've shared with them, and we've showed them, hey, if we collaborate together, perhaps we can be filling up trucks. To your point, we've got manufacturing companies near our manufacturing facilities, and we've started pulling our freight together and sharing with them. So it may make sense, we're shipping out tractors, but we're bringing back a load of steel for the company down the street that's making lawnmowers or whatever it may be. So we're becoming, it's still more of a manual process, but we're trying to be more and more connected with those folks. And some of our suppliers in EME have actually joined our service and with our 4Flow TMS and are using the same TMS. And depending on the level of, I guess, partnership that we have with them, they can open up the data for us to see or not. It's how they choose to do it. So we're getting better, but there's a long ways to go. We're probably, 5% on the way.
Yeah. And Ed, does your technology enable that? Is something you help?
Yeah, there's a lot of really fun applications we've been doing, integrating tier ones and major OEMs. When you can signal a demand trigger right at the line and immediately flag it at your tier one to say, I need a box of left-hand blue mirrors to the plant at 4 o'clock, and have that appear directly on the bin that has to be filled and go back, there's a real power in that and an efficiency in that. And even for the logistics provider, having those bins and those orders kind of come together at the shipping dock so you can build an ASN and ship to the factory, there's a lot of power in that too. So we're getting a lot of what we call twinning of materials, that immediately as a bin is emptied, it can be filled at the tier one in real time instead of the traditional log on to my portal at 8 o'clock, download my orders for the day, try and get them out on the 4 o'clock truck. We're seeing a real-time demand. And that creates efficiencies on both sides to reduce inventory levels and speed of reaction.
Okay. And Dustin, you made a lot of changes at AGCO, as you described, but I'm interested in the decision-making. How did that go? How did you have to encourage and build support from above to get the investment, manpower, whatever resources you needed to make the changes that you made? Or was it from above saying you need to make these changes, you go ahead and do it? And also from below, maybe below is the wrong expression, but how did you encourage your teams to be interested and be part of these changes?
Sure. Like Ed mentioned, it always starts with the ROI, right? So that's where we started. We were looking at our solutions and what we were trying to do. And we looked at where we were at today and did some benchmarking, and we realized, we're nowhere near where we need to be today. And whenever we look at what the best in class was doing, we said, there's a lot of money out here on the table and a lot of efficiencies. So whenever we started looking at the different solutions, and we said, hey, if this is going to get us from here to here, here's the ROI, and we've delivered on that. Like I said, our TMS system payback right around 12 months for everything we've invested in. So we've built a lot of credibility with our leadership because of that exercise, that they're letting us do more and more, trials, pilots, things that are a little more on the edge of, and so to speak, so we can, see the next big thing out there. But it did start with the ROI. And as far as the folks, at the more tactical level, getting them excited, it was all about showing them their benefit, right? So we did the ROI, but what's the benefit to the folks on the floor? And the benefit for them, it ranges from various things of being able to plan much better than you have in the past, being able to look ahead, being able, again, to reduce trucks, which right now, anything, again, like I said, if we tell a guy that, hey, tomorrow you're going to have 10 less trucks than you did last week to plan and load, they're happy. So it was showing the benefits to the folks on the floor and how they were going to benefit from it as well.
And Benoit, when you're speaking to people, because I know you're actually working directly with some companies, how are you finding the decision-making process?
It's quite interesting. It depends on the company. And there are some companies where a lot's happening in the mid-level. Okay, so a lot of the brewing of the kind of ideas we're talking about. So it's going to take quite a while for them to begin to be able to put a storyline together that they can climb the ladder. And then if they succeed to climb the ladder, then we're going to begin to talk with the real people that can really decide. And so that's one type of company that we see. Those are the ones that for us are the least successful. Okay, so those are the ones that cause trouble. Yeah, the ones that work much nicer are the ones where there have been discussion inside, and there's been champions at the very high level that have boarded in. And when we begin to talk about it, there are people at the mid-level, but there are always like one or two people, at least at the very high level, that are listening, that are getting engaged into the process, and will align and say, yes, this makes sense, let's go and do it. So we bypass like months and months and months, okay, of going around and back cycle. So that's been shown as much more interesting. You see places where they have to be they have to plan everything, okay? Everything has to be lined up nicely, while other places, they're much more prone to experiment. The fastest I've seen on this by far is when we're dealing right now with SF Express, UPS, FedEx of China. We went there, met with their CEO, CIO, CTO, and all this, okay? And within like 2 days, we had already a project shaped and getting ready. We got it contracted, we started, we went we interacted on the web, get back to them 3 months later for this milestone. And meanwhile, in the field, they had already pilot tested the key ideas that we're dealing with, okay? And now they were already at the stage of, okay, we know this now let's go to the other stage. So those guys are piloting all the time on a big scale, being promoted by the top guys, okay, to go there and get results, even though they're not perfect. Get there, learn, and we'll fine tune and improve. So those are very different worlds of companies.
Okay. And for you, Ed, you have to, encourage people to use your services. How is that process? How do you find that?
Well, from my perspective, because of the people I talk to, mostly C-level executives, I say it starts with themes and dreams. There's a lot of desire to get this IoT vision realized in their organization. Many are digitizing. When you see Ford firing their CEO after the most successful quarter in company history, you realize that there's an appetite and an urgency to get to the digital transformation. And so we usually start there with the concept of how this dynamic, smart material can change their operations at the edge. It goes down to the operator level, where we then introduce the concept and we build actual workflows with them. It gets through finance and IT to get the approvals through. And then the journey really begins. Once those first boxes are ticked, the operational people start to grasp what that paradigm shift means to them, and they build it into real stories that go back up to the senior management that had the theme and the dream in the first place, and we start to see some real momentum happen in the organization where they radically change the way they deal with supply chain, with logistics, because of what the IoT enables. But it is not a quick process. I've said that to my board many times. As you can appreciate, starting from the theme and the dream, going down through operations, working back up through IT, and then doing another cycle through till the whole management team understands what that IoT can mean to their business in the next decade. We're just in the middle of that journey. We have a couple of very, very large OEMs that are in their multi-plant rollout stage with us now, doing 20s and 30s and 40 plants at a time. And they're just realizing the first few applications, but it's exciting to watch that decision-making process in the organization as they start to grasp the technology and understand what it means for their operation. It's kind of an individual journey for each organization.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the audience? Okay, not yet. So how close is this, these IIoT goals? Are they close? Are they actually available for use now? Or is it still, 3-5 years ahead?
I think that there's low-hanging fruit that's realizable immediately, and that's why we've had success in the market, is that some of these savings are obvious and happen very quickly. As we heard at AGCO, some of the great efficiencies you gain by just tapping the beginnings of the technology. So I think that that's immediate, and I think that many companies can implement right away and get immediate savings. But the true full automation of industrial IoT and what it's going to mean, just as it is in the rest of our lives, as more autonomy is coming in and the disruption that's happening, I think that's taking a couple of decades as it all kind of gets implanted. And it's going to be a convergence of multiple technologies, more artificial intelligence down at the edge, different ways of representation with augmented reality. We're certainly seeing today, one of our very large customers was a valve manufacturer, and their ability to flag a quality defect in the past at the end of the line and then send a bunch of people out with little red paper tickets to quarantine a batch, and then do a training session to re-instruct the workers on how to seat an O-ring properly so it would pass the pressure test, completely changed when now they can do an inspection, hit a button, and the visual instruction at the assembly line immediately changes to train the operator, say, put the O-ring down this way, and press a button to confirm that you did it correctly. To do that in real time versus their process before was an immense change, and those little nuggets are scattered all throughout. And I think it's going to take our industry a while to realize all those different advantages. But there's low-hanging fruit that's available today.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, in a second we're going to do the voting, polling. So if you can make sure you're logged into the app, and then as we finish off the kind of Q&A. So, but before we do that, I just want to give you a final opportunity if anyone wanted to make any comments or any questions to what we've heard for the first session. Okay. All right. In that case, we'll go straight to the voting. So, I'm not sure we've done any polling yet. So, if you go to the home page of the app, then you'll see a page called polling. We try to keep it relatively simple because, after all, you are logistics guys and supply chain people, so we have to keep things simple for you. Probably in IT they'd use these long words and so on that they use, but unfortunately, maybe we're just the guys who do the things as opposed to talk about them a lot. So if you go on one of the buttons on the home page says polling, and that's where you'll see the questions come up. Again, it's relatively simple. You'll have 10 seconds to cast your vote, and then we'll give you the results at the end. So there's a few questions, but I think it gives us a broad outlook on what we think is happening in the industry. So question number 1 would be, what new technology will have the biggest impact on the automotive logistics supply chain? Do you think it will be 3D printing, blockchain, AR, augmented reality, or artificial intelligence, or just the introduction of electric vehicles? So which one of those will have the biggest impact on our industry? So you can vote now. So blockchain, and quite a strong, just above electric vehicles, but 35% think that blockchain is going to have the biggest impact on the automotive logistics supply chain. Interesting, because speaking to some of the people about blockchain, I'm getting so many mixed messages, but if we can get it right, if blockchain really develops in the way it should, then for sure, one of the biggest impacts it'll have on any industry will be what it does to supply chains. So the next question. So where will autonomous vehicles have the most impact on supply chains and logistics? So will it be the fact that there'll be autonomous cars, passenger cars? Will it be the autonomous heavy trucks that'll have a huge impact on us? And there is some consideration that might be, before the autonomous cars. Or will it be just the AGVs, the automated guided vehicles? Which ones of these will have the biggest impact on supply chains and logistics? Vote now. So autonomous heavy trucks is by far the biggest answer. And again, you know, when we speak, or again, reading and talking to people, they do believe that autonomous heavy trucks will be, you know, will be more in use before the autonomous passenger vehicles really become more in use. The next question. Which companies will be the automotive game changers in the future? Will it be the established vehicle makers, Toyota, Volkswagen, General Motors, etc., Honda, you know, the ones we know? Will it be the new entrant vehicle makers, the Waymos and Dysons and Neos and so on? Or will it be external companies, someone like Amazon? Will they be the ones, or maybe even companies we don't know, we don't know that they're going to exist yet? Which companies will be the biggest automotive game changers in the future? So again, if you can answer now, please. So it's pretty close, this one. There is a belief that the established vehicle makers are already changing and will adapt and stay ahead of the curve. But it's not, you know, 3% difference between the new entrants coming in and could be, you know, the biggest game changers. And still, you know, a healthy vote, a third of the vote, well, just under a third of the vote went for external companies like Amazon will have the biggest impact on the supply chain. I suppose it depends on the top ones, if they're adaptable and agile, to make sure that they don't just fall behind, become, as we saw at the dinner last night, that they don't become the dinosaurs of the automotive industry. Next question, please. Does your company and leadership expect supply chain management and logistics to be even more important in the future? With technology, does that make these departments, our departments in this room, more important? Will it be the same, or will they be less important because a lot of the decisions will be made by technologies? So again, if you can vote now, please. Yeah. Be interesting if we ask the actual board members of the vehicle makers and part suppliers whether they actually think, what a surprise that we think it will be more important, you know, in the worst case scenario that it will stay the same. But I think one of the reasons we have this conference has been a little bit more forward-looking than we normally have. We've co-located it with IT because, you know, the way we can remain important and perhaps be even more important is if we adapt to what the industry is going to become and make sure that we stay and become even more relevant to our individual companies. So the next question. Is your supply chain and logistics organization ready for the new automotive industry of the future? So again, yes, we're ready. We're almost there. We're starting to get there. And are you kidding? Do you know what day-to-day issues I have to face at the moment? So if you can vote now, please. Okay, again, quite a strong vote there, you know, we're starting to get there. And okay, that's good. We're starting with thinking about it and talking about it. I suppose the even split almost between, you know, we're almost there and are you kidding? You know, again, the good thing about these anonymous polls is you can actually say the truth. You're not saying it individually on stage. And it is an issue. You know, we all face this every day. You know, what are you doing planning long term? What are you doing then? But you know, we'll have these meetings ourselves. You know, what's your long-term plan? Why don't you spend more time on the long-term plan? Why don't you spend a week, 2 weeks, a month planning the long-term plan? And then at the end of the conversation, by the way, what are we going to do about the plant that closed down because of a fire in wherever it is and stuff like that? So that's the reality. Next question. What will be the biggest challenges on developing the supply chain organization for the future? Will it be talent, human resources, which we haven't touched so much at the conference? I know it's a huge issue, and perhaps something we're going to talk about in the Q&A in the next session. Will it be talent and human resources? Will it be the ability to find the best technology in this forest of, everyone's throwing new ideas, technology, startups all around us? Or is it the ability to invest in this new technology? We can all see great technology, but we need the ability and support to be able to invest. So what do you think will be the biggest challenges on developing the supply chain organization for the future? And answer now, please. Talent and human resources. And again, that's a huge issue globally as well. There's certain things that we could cover at all of our conferences around the world, wherever they are, India, China, Russia, North America, Europe. And the human resources aspect is a huge issue. I think it's improving a little bit because not so long ago, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I used to talk to students, supply chain students at universities, even universities in Michigan, and I'd say, what do you want to do? I want to work in supply chain. Okay, what industries? Oh, we want to work for Apple or Amazon. No one said, even in Detroit, they weren't saying we want to work for General Motors, Ford or Chrysler or anything like that. I think our industry, the changes that have happened in the last few years with autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, and just the new mobility kind of discussion is making the automotive industry a bit more attractive, but then we're now competing with every other industry who are also looking for these same resources. So the next question. Who will be responsible, who should be responsible for discovering the best technology? Should it be the vehicle makers? Because I suppose in the end they're going to be it may be the beneficiaries. Should they be looking out to find out what's happening out there? Will it be the part suppliers, the auto part suppliers, the tier suppliers, collecting the best information and sharing it? Should it be the logistics service providers? Because there is, I did a poll, kind of a very unofficial survey amongst car makers and tier suppliers, and they actually said that they want their tier suppliers to tell them and present them with the best new technologies? Or should it be the tech companies themselves having more access or pushing harder to get their points across to the industry? So who should be responsible for discovering the best technology? Answer now, please. So the logistics service providers. So I'm not sure because let's face it, I'm sure there's more logistics service providers in the room. And unfortunately, one of the downsides of being anonymous is I'm not sure if it was the logistics service providers saying, leave it to us, it's our job to feed you with the best information, or whether it was actually sometimes, the vehicle makers or the tier suppliers saying, we need you to feed, to bring the best technology to us. But either way, the majority, vote is that it's the LSP, the logistics service providers who can and maybe will have the responsibility for ensuring that they know what the best technology is so they can offer it to their customers. Next question. What partnerships will be the most important to enable the new supply chain organizations? Will it be vehicle maker collaboration? Will it be vehicle makers and tier suppliers working more closely together? Will it be the vehicle makers working more closely with their logistics service providers? Will it be vehicle makers working more closely with tech companies so they can, discover what the best new ideas are? Or is it all of the above? The vehicle makers, the tier suppliers, the tech companies, and the logistics service providers have just got to work more closely together so that everyone understands this connectivity, perhaps, in the industry, because that's the only way. A true supply chain, and the fact that we call it supply chains, means that a lot of things should be linked. But in reality, again, what partnerships will be the most important to enable the best and new supply chain organizations. Again, if you can vote now, please. All of the above, and a very strong vote for all of the above. So again, you know, connectivity, that's the reason for some of these events, or for these events, to bring everybody together, to share ideas, to talk. And that's also very much what we try to do at Automotive Logistics in our group, whether it's through our magazines, whether it's through our conference, whether it's online, whether it's through our LinkedIn groups, is to try and bring the industry together. So I hope you enjoyed the results of the polls. I hope they gave you some interesting feedback on what the industry thinks. And I'd also really like to thank the panel who really gave us an insight on what the future could and should look like. So thank you very much to the panel. The next two sessions, we're being, the wall's coming down, so we're going to be joint sessions with Automotive IT and Automotive Logistics Supply Chain. So you might want to take your things with you, especially if you're near the wall, to make sure that they don't get lost in change around. And we'll be rejoining at 11:15 in this world, the joint room. So thank you very much. Enjoy your coffee break and visit our sponsors on their stands, because they've all got solutions which should be right for our industry. Thank you.